I am the graphic designer Young Won Kim, in charge of the basics of Blender motion graphics. Nice to meet you. We'll cover the basic foundations of Blender for ocean graphics with me over the next 22 sessions. It's focused on students who are new to three-dimensional work. From the next lecture, we'll explain everything step by step from a beginner's perspective. First of all, this lecture will start with an orientation on motion graphics. Before even turning on the tool, let's take some time to talk about the direction of Blender and its courses. Before we begin, all 22 of my lessons will take place on macOS. So the shortcuts are slightly different from Windows. Let me explain here. The shortcut being displayed right now is called the Option key, which corresponds to the Alt key in Windows. The shortcut that appears now is called the Command key. It serves a role similar to the Control key in Windows. First of all, given Blender's characteristics, Windows and macOS. There's no need to worry too much since the UI structure of Linux is completely the same. And just because I use a Mac doesn't mean you all need to use one too. I'm letting you know that Windows is much more advantageous than Mac in many ways. We can't not talk about Blender. First off, Blender has quite a history as a solution. I myself only heard of its existence in passing and didn't really care much about it until now. I started using it since the major update of Blender in 2019, version 2.8. At that time, I was still using Cinema 4D and I was quite shocked. 3D tools are now costing millions of won and are quite expensive, but I think there's a reason for that. But after using Blender for a few hours, I've overcome my bias. It's known that the free tools are good in premise, but compared to the industry standards shown on the screen now, I felt it was sufficiently adequate. Of course, excluding Houdini, as it's in a different dimension of tool. This is now the Blender homepage. I will continue to organize and post content as Blender is further developed and new versions are released. More news about movies or animations being made with Blender. We're continuously updating you with all things Blender. Of course, you can also download Blender here. Blender is like an all-in-one package tool that can handle every animation process. In fact, it's not just 3D, but also, if you look here, compositing and video editing, and it seemed like a bright future because even 2D animation could be produced with just one tool. Sure enough, as the years change, the number of users explodes. I've also found myself increasingly using Blender for projects at some point. Here, as you can see, this is among the Netflix animations. Next Gen is an animation. Unlike this, most of it was produced with Blender. Even Netflix animations are being made. Employment opportunities with Blender are opening up one by one, and it'll be soon before long. I think it might be in a position equivalent to tools like Cinema 4D, Maya, Max, Houdini. There's also a perspective that it has already arrived, but one thing to keep in mind is that all tools have their relative strengths. The best tool changes depending on the situation. I hope you're not someone who stubbornly sticks to just one tool. There must be various reasons, but someday there will definitely come a day when you need to learn these paid tools. If you learn Blender well, you will be able to learn medical tools without any problems. Because 3D tools share all the theories. Once you learn one, switching to another tool makes access much easier. Of course, it's a lecture on Blender. But since it's also a motion graphics lecture, we can't leave out talk about motion graphics. Motion graphics are used in advertisements, movie opening sequences, media art, music videos, and even YouTube. If you have a display and a device to play it on. In my view, it's a versatile field that can be applied across any area. Well, in the end, it's literally, think of it as motion plus graphics, a type of moving graphic design based on personal opinion. I think it has characteristics that are more rhythmic, yet simplified in movement, compared to animations we know. So, ultimately, since motion graphics are part of graphic design, it's good to have a basic understanding of graphic design theory and knowledge. Whether you buy a book to read, it's good to broaden your horizons by exploring a lot. Since it came on, let's explore sites where we can grow our eyes together. It's a social networking service that's really popular worldwide. Instagram. If you search for the hashtag motion graphics, you'll see a global outpouring. You'll be able to see close to 3 million, almost 4 million posts in an instant. And another one is a site called Vimeo. Think of this place as the YouTube of the video industry. Compared to Instagram, the output is naturally from a platform frequented by professionals. It feels much more professional and major than Instagram. And there's another cafe called Blender Zone. Here you can see a lot of work from domestic users. And if you get stuck, you can look at Q&A or tips to find a solution. And the last site I'll introduce is called Behance. It's a portfolio archiving site operated by Adobe. If you search for Blender there, you can also see works made solely with Blender. There are things like this. Yes, there are works like this too. Actually, the tool used to make it isn't what's important. For example, I saw a piece made with Cinema 4D. In fact, that feature can be similarly created in that tool too. So instead of just looking at works made entirely of fur that you intend to do, practice by imagining well-made motions from here and there in your head, applying them directly or adapting them. After breaking them as much as possible, keep the image well stored in your mind and wonder what function is used here. How can we achieve this color tone? If you keep at it steadily, you'll soon see your skills improve. Now, let's lay the foundation with these headphones. I then set up 5 derived scenes. We're planning to capture the emotion too. It's normal for beginners to find it hard to understand what this is and how it works at first. Three-dimensional graphics are originally difficult, so I plan to proceed with the lecture as slowly as possible. If you skip what you don't know, you'll get stuck on similar topics later. Also, those of you who are particularly good at learning, if you think you've got the hang of it,
From that point, it becomes my
try to
second.
make it as different from the location as possible. What this means is,
applying such
so
functions.
by making changes like altering the shape or changing the color palette, try creating variations on your own. Attending lectures will be very helpful for improving your skills. So don't be too anxious, and consistent effort is the most important thing, I think. And finally, students often ask a lot of questions about computer specifications here and there. 3D graphics often require specific hardware capabilities to be feasible or not. So I usually advise to simply live with the best. If that doesn't work, I hope you use at least a good graphics card. I might have said a lot about whether I'm any good or not, but no matter how much I talk, we should start by opening the tool, shouldn't we? In the next lesson, we'll install Blender and explore the interface. Let's take some time to learn the shortcuts that come with it. We'll end the orientation here. See you in lesson 2.